the beats of Bahia, Brazil, the drinks of the Dominican Republic, and the llamas of Lima, Peru. Latin American nations making a strong showing at the China International Import Expo, with the region's two most populous countries, Brazil and Mexico, showcased as guests of honor.
How much?
Exhibitors say they are here to diversify their global pool of buyers.
We concentrate 80% of our exports to US and Canada, mainly US. And we want to know more markets in order to promote our products around the world. And China is one of the most important. Most delicious.
Garcia says in China, popular Mexican products can find new uses.
Avocado, as we know in Mexico, is like a traditional product. And here in China, changed a little bit. Well, they call the superfood products, so we are looking for that.
Brazilian businesses agree. The message here, though, is it's not just about supplying China, but also sustaining its people.
In China before, maybe they just wanted to eat, just to feed the body. Now they want to care more about the skin, the hair, only cosmetics, and also the body itself to improve the consumption of health products.
President Xi Jinping has already made a handful of visits to Latin America and sees the region's integration with China as a key part of his signature Belt and Road initiative. So, China is investing more and more into Latin American infrastructure and buying more and more Latin American goods. And signing more and more deals. A new free trade agreement with Chile has removed nearly all duties on goods traded between the two.
In times where some governments are talking about protectionism, China and Chile agreed on the importance of free trade, open markets, and also multilateralism. And in this sense, we are working very close together.
And in some sectors, it's already paying off. China is now the second biggest destination for Chilean wine.
China loves Chilean wine, I'm sure. And Chilean people love China consumers also.
With China's changing palate and pocketbook, the market is expected to grow. Indeed, those here say the future is here.
And Roee now joins us live from Shanghai. Roee, I love the international feel of that story. You've been there since the beginning. Talk about some of the challenges for some of these companies and the folks you had a chance to chat with.
That's right. You know, we chatted with several of these producers, these potential exporters to China. They're mindful of the fact that China wants to increase its imports by $10 trillion over the next 5 years. So there's a huge appetite. One of the challenges is meeting that appetite. One producer told me that he signed a deal, or at least an intent, to purchase 50,000 tons of mung beans used for sprouts here in China, but is only able right now to produce about 20% of that. So capacity is one issue. The other biggest issue that across the line, especially for those trying to come into China for the first time, is this issue of the language barrier and the cultural barrier and just the logistics barrier. And that's something that everyone is facing. Even those who've already been here, their message has been this is a challenge, but that they're dealing with. And the third one, I think, is simply bureaucracy. Several of these companies have already been cleared to export into China. Others are on a list waiting to bring in their products, especially when it comes to things that affect food, health, and safety. China, it notes, is doing its best to expedite items that it sees as priorities, to expedite that list. But that is a challenge that many people are facing. Still, despite that, there is a sense of optimism from all of the booths. And the idea, of course, here is that, you know, good things come to those who wait. Sean?
Interesting. I'm also struck by, if you look at some nations basically focusing on nationalism and not looking at a global economy. Tell us about some of your impressions during the expo and the success, if you will, of knocking down some of those barriers that people have talked about before that you just chatted about.
It's an interesting question because, again, this is Xi Jinping's project. This is his pet project. He announced it last year at the Belt and Road Forum that he wants to host this International Import Expo. At a time that many people are focused on closing in, he is trying to say the door to China is open. And indeed, he took the stage. He opened the event, the opening ceremony, but he didn't hog the stage. He shared it with leaders who also spoke at that opening ceremony from various continents, including the developing economies of the world. So that was an interesting interesting point. And then he let the expo happen. He wasn't touring around every day. He wasn't making all these speeches. The focus was these sort of speed dating scenarios where producers and buyers, suppliers can all meet face to face and really, without traveling around the world, really start these supply and demand chains to really get things going. So that was one of the messages we've heard. The second is that China seems committed to this. There's already signs everywhere for the dates of the 2019 CIIE that will also happen here in Shanghai in November. And also, we're going to see Xi Jinping traveling again to Latin America this month for the G20, delivering his message of multilateralism, of a globalization of trade in the world. And that is a direct contrast, without naming him, of Donald Trump's message that we've been hearing coming from the U.S. And that was also language echoed in Xi Jinping's opening comments, and indeed echoed by some of the other leaders that were here. We heard from the Chilean foreign minister, but there are also presidents here, prime ministers, and all of them sharing the theme that the world needs more interdependence and less independence. Sean?
Roee, thanks for wrapping up the flavor and the flair, and we'll look forward to the second anniversary next year.